Thanks, Joel. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you. It feels great to see some familiar people that I would probably be hugging right now if we had the option. For those who don't know me, my name is Liv Cazzola, and I'm beaming over to you from my hometown of Guelph, Ontario. You can usually find me playing with my bands Tragedy Ann and the Lifers. I'm a passionate music educator for the earth. Today, I'm here representing both the Canadian Music Declares Emergency team and Folk Music Ontario's environmental advocacy team. I'm so glad that we're together in this space today as we focus our minds and hearts on the kind of change that will allow all living things on Earth not only to survive, but also really thrive. This music community has already had to take a hard look at how we do things in this time. And to me, this opportunity is one that we should not waste. We can really take this moment to reimagine our relationship with the earth and apply that understanding to how we can run events in harmony with all life. So in this circle, we're bringing together many presenters who hope to do this same kind of work. Personally, this gives me a lot of hope for in-person gatherings to return real soon and for them to continue on for generations. So this is the very first of 4 workshops we have planned together, and it's all to focus our shared intentions into mindfully moving forward into a lower carbon future, or carbon neutral or carbon negative, all together as a community. We hope that today you'll come away both inspired and informed about how to make practical, effective, and achievable strides towards environmental sustainability. We have here today 4 incredible presenters who are leading their organizations toward a truly sustainable festival experience. Moderating this workshop is Michelle Demers, the Artistic Director of Mission Folk Festival in BC. She's currently working on her Greener Festivals Assessor course, and she's going to be guiding this conversation in some really meaningful ways. Joining her is Marie Zimmerman, the Executive Director of Hillside Festival here in Guelph. Spencer Elora, and faraway friend Belem Vallina Gonzalez from Sinsal Festival in Galicia. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Michelle.
Thanks, Liv. Thank you for taking the time and energy to gather us all together and explore this topic, something that is close to a lot of our hearts. I know right now it might feel like a little bit of an abstract exercise as we are all in various states of working remotely, but we've heard good things from Belem and that things over in Spain are getting back to in person. So that definitely gives us some hope. We talked a little bit about the format for today. I'm going to ask each of our panelists some questions, working through in order. If any of our audience members have questions, please throw them in the chat, and we are going to get to a audience participation portion of today. I'm coming to you today from my home in Seattle when I'm not in mission, and that's on the unceded traditional lands of the Duwamish people, and I'm grateful to be here. So how about we jump right in? And I'm going to direct this first question to Belem. We've talked a lot and considered how our various organizations approach green initiatives. And I'd like to hear from you about how Festival Sinsal approaches this.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this panel. Thank you very much to Music Declares Emergency Canada, Folk Music Ontario, and Global Toronto. I think I don't forget anyone. It's a great honor to share also this panel with Spencer, Michelle, and Marie. And thanks for giving the opportunity on behalf of the whole Sinsal audio team to be chosen to talk about sustainability. We always would like to highlight the importance of making environmental sustainability a priority in our venues and festivals. So really glad to join. For those who do not know us, we are a small promoter in the northwest of Spain near the border with Portugal. We mainly focus on development and protection of our cultural heritage. We basically work on the concept of territory at all levels, but using music as a common thread. So we develop many activities throughout the year, but let's say that our most well-known and also the largest event, although it's a boutique event, that you all are most welcome to join, is the festival we celebrate over the last 20 years in a very special island during the month of July with the limit capacity. It's around 800 people because the island is it's declared like a cultural interest. And the most, let's say, specific characteristic we have is our lineup is tricky. It's unknown. Nobody knows who's going to play over there because we believe that no artist is better than another one. So coming back to the topic that brings us here today, it is something that we really carry in our DNA, which is the corporate sustainability at all levels, like environmental, social, and also economic. We've been working a lot on policy for sustainable and responsible festivals within the government here. And for our philosophy, sustainable events are not just, those can endure indefinitely. There are also events that fulfill important social, let's say, cultural, economic, and environmental roles that people really value. Although we really focus on the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, that has been a person hired for this specific and dedicated task, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. So she will be a great value to this panel, but I'm the one who speaks a more decent English. So here I am. One is interested in particular activities we are conducting. I can gladly connect with her. So since she has been there, like there isn't, let's say, an evaluation made before, during, after the festival, with the final impact report of the activities, which is a really great tool and very useful that we really study and value, and it served like a strategic, wise thinking to prepare the next move. So I think, just to sum up, Sinsal is a festival that take initiatives to tackle a big topic nowadays, such as a climate challenge, with the small initiatives, from plastic waste to low carbon transport, vegetarianism. We have it all. So I think that with this, you can get an idea of what we do. I don't want to overdo it much, Michelle, but I don't know if it was pretty clear, but we've been working in these 3 lines of sustainability, social, economic, and environmental since the very beginning.
I like how you've identified those 3 essential parts to understanding the concept of sustainability. Marie, can you tell us about how Hillside approaches the concept of sustainability, both within your organization and your events? Oh, you're muted, Marie.
Like Belem, I would say that it's also part of our DNA. We are a 38-year-old festival, but we were founded by musicians and environmental advocates. So right from the start, the festival was an outlet for local musicians, but it was also a protest against wasteful and harmful attitudes toward nature. And from the beginning, it programmed alternative ways of doing things and seeing things, and it was very collaborative in its practices. It's always tried to address the role that power and privilege play in community change work, and has worked against power asymmetry. We also work with the triple bottom line: cultural, environmental, and economic, and we try to create opportunities for participation and to practice collaboration. So, cleaning up the festival site also involves seed planting and tree planting at other times of the year, or compost pits on site, for instance. So we have a 12-member board of directors. We're a not-for-profit charity. We have a small complement of staff, and we have about 1,300 volunteers when we're running in-person events. Anyway, we have 2 festivals that we run: a summer festival, which is also on an island, Belem, a small island in Guelph Lake Conservation Area, and we have a winter festival, which is a downtown urban, smaller festival. And we run outreach and courses throughout the year. So we look at everything that we do, and we try to measure its value according to the triple bottom line. And we are always trying to adapt, but also to try innovative new things with green initiatives. We're also carbon neutral.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. And let's head over to your almost neighbor, Spencer in Elora. Tell us about
Riverfest. So Riverfest, for those of you who don't know, we're a 3-day outdoor festival. We are probably, I think we're 20 minutes down the road from where Hillside happens. We're in Elora, Ontario. Elora is a village of, I would say it's a very artistic community. There's a lot of visual artists, musicians, retired musicians. We have a running joke that there's more Junos per capita in Elora than anywhere else in the in Canada, because there's a lot of people who have played on various albums, who have been awarded lots in the past. Sorry, I'm just rambling now. Riverfest started in 2009 as a kind of a backyard fundraiser for the Elora Center for the Arts. And at that point, it was about maybe 300 people, 1-day event with some local musicians and one regional headliner. And it kind of grew slowly until about 2014, when the organizers made a concerted effort to turn it into something larger. They wanted to bring more people to the community. They wanted to showcase the beautiful village that we live in and help the local businesses thrive. So we went from 2013 to 2014, we went from about 1,000 people 1-day event to a 2-day event with about 4,500 people. Now we're at a point where we get about 6,500 people a day over 3 days. So that being said, we've grown very fast. With us, we've been, I'll put this out there, we've been very lucky to have a festival such as Hillside so close to us for so long, and leading by a great example to help show people in our region and really like across Canada how you can be more environmentally friendly and sustainable. Our general how we like to do things is every year we try to add another item to our list of what we do to help. So from the beginning, we've had reusable mugs, which I believe Hillside was one of the first festivals to do that. A number of years ago, we were approached by Wellington Water Watchers and Save Our Water, which is our local water protectors here, about phasing out or getting rid of bottled water. So we worked with them, and we worked with a company called Quench Buggy to bring in ways to have people refill their water vessels. We also went in with all what we call the big Fs here, which are the major events that happen in Center Wellington, which is our district here, to purchase a water cart. That we all pitched in to purchase a water cart that could be used by all of our major events, but also rented out by soccer tournaments, all kinds of, anyone who really wants to use it can rent it for a very discounted, cheap rate for a weekend price, which basically just covers the maintenance and the delivery and removal. We've phased out plastic straws. We phased out, or we got rid of non-biodegradable containers for food. We've done things like we consciously decided not to do, we consciously decided to not allow things that people can leave behind after the event. So we've never had a program. We always have it online or have an app so that people can see all the information, get all the information that they need. It's one of the benefits of everyone having a phone in their hand nowadays. But that's something that we've been conscious of. We don't allow people to hand out garbage to like swag to hundreds of people just to have it like dropped on the ground or thrown in the garbage, that kind of thing. So that's basically where we're at. We're working on into a composting program in 2020. Obviously that's been put on hold, so we're working on that. We'll have that when we're allowed to have our festival again. We'll have that in place. Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Each of you have talked about some things that have crossed policy, some things that have crossed procedure, some things, various ideas that are very specific to your festivals, but also I think we're seeing generally in the event and festival world. And I'd be interested to hear about sort of what has been your biggest path to success, or perhaps barrier to success, that each of you have experienced within the realm of your organization and your events. And Marie, we'll start with you.
So Hillside has been introducing greening initiatives for such a long time that I've been with Hillside almost 12 years, and so I don't have that history that I actually experienced. But I know that some of the barriers initially were that people didn't want to purchase a mug, for instance. They felt that we should give them some plastic cup or something that they could buy a beer in. And I also heard that initially, because we banned plastic water bottles and we brought in a water tanker and so on close to 15 years ago, people weren't sure whether or not that was hygienic. We also wash dishes for 6,500 people a day, and people weren't sure that was hygienic either. And so those were kind of interesting barriers. And so really the solution was to integrate sustainability into the audience's experiences. And you do that by offering workshops. So we have, workshops on the pleasures of food, but also the politics of food, and integrating it on almost every single level. Like even the posters that we created from artwork would showcase something like bees, for instance, and flowers and nature. But what we discovered is that education is a critical part of being an entertainment presenter, that people have to understand and buy into the vision you have. So what we have tried to do is educate everyone, and then we found that we also have our volunteers who volunteer for a reason, and one of the reasons is our environmentalism. And so your volunteers end up becoming your ambassadors. We used to have young volunteers at our trash turnarounds, which is to stream all of your waste, including dishes that need to be washed and so on. And so these young people would be telling older people all the time, no, it doesn't go there, it goes here, this is what you do. And did you really need to bring that plastic thing in, and so on. So it's wonderful when children are buying into it and educating their elders. So we've been successful in that, I think.
Excellent, as we're all taking note of incorporating our youngest volunteers into some of these strategies. Spencer, how have you faced successes and barriers as you've implemented some of these policies at Riverfest?
I will again give Hillside credit for doing a lot of that legwork for us. We definitely have had a certain, I think we have a certain amount of crossover between our two festivals. So there's definitely been a certain number of patrons who already got it. We did have to do a lot of educating though, with I'd say about 60% of our crowd. When we definitely have people who don't understand why they can't bring in packaged water. They don't understand why they can't, why they need to buy a mug. And every year we go through those motions. But we've become very good at explaining to them why, and letting people know that before they show up at the festival, so they have an idea what to expect. I think part of our biggest hurdle was not educating people before they got there, and then they would show up with a bunch of 2-liter bottles of water, and we'd be like, you can't bring that in here because we're trying to like prove a point, right? Like we don't want that in our festival. So that's been a hurdle. I thought originally with the packaged water thing that it would be an issue with some of the artists, but overall it's been we've had very few issues. Everybody's been very supportive, and we've had a lot of artists come back to us and say that they don't accept packaged water on tour anymore, which has been a great thing for us. We also, in 2017, I forgot to mention this before, this is kind of me going off on a tangent again, but in 2017, we partnered with Wellington Water Watchers to put on a one-day mini festival protest in Erin, Ontario, called Waterstock, which was a protest against to educate people on packaged water and why it's bad, and also to put some pressure on the Ontario government to continue the moratorium on water taking permits for water bottling companies. So I think that actually helped us a lot with getting it out there, that like that's one of the things that we draw a line in the sand over. So I would say that's gotten easier over the last few years. Other than that, like as far as educating people, as hurdles go, we have a small staff. Actually, I'm the only full-time staff on the festival. We have a few people that come in for seasonal work, but everybody else is completely volunteer. We have about 500 volunteers, and I would say that that's sort of why we have been picking one thing every year to change rather than trying to go all out. We try to we're doing baby steps because it's easier to manage, and just for me and for the few people that are working to be able to assess everything and make sure it's working properly. But I think that for me is like what I always tell other events is you don't have to do it all at once. It's so easy to just time goes by quick. So if you do one thing every year, before you know it, you're doing a whole bunch of things, and it's really great. Yeah.
Well, and that actually sounds like a really sustainable way to approach sustainability, maybe. Belem, how are things at your festival in terms of implementation and some of the successes and maybe some of the barriers you've experienced?
Yeah, I was thinking about it when I was listening to my colleagues. It's a difficult topic to choose. I was thinking about gender balance because we're pretty good on that, and we achieving gender equality, beyond the main stage. But you think, I think it's important also the concept of equity, because at least here equity is a serious issue for the event sector, particularly because many governments values event in the context of culture and social integration, leisure. So I think it's probably that many people will not be able to participate in some events because of the high cost or inaccessibility or lack of knowledge about the opportunities. So I think let's say our main success, it was the policy working together with our regional government action related to this event that violates equity principle. And I think it was happening, in the art sector when it was heavily subsidized by the institutions. So I think we continue to charge not high prices, but we still keep in, despite of the crisis and economically or natural disaster, whatever here, making it accessible for everyone, but also making it impossible for people to attend. So I think what solution was to maintain for us, the high nominal prices, but to ensure the low cost tickets are available for those are in need. So I think I would pretty say like that was our main success. So it's another is to practically take art and events to the people.
Well, and I think you've really struck on that social sustainability is key to all of this environmental sustainability that we're looking at. All of you mentioned really tangible ways that you have introduced elements of sustainability to your organization, and like all of you, Mission Folk, we've banned the bottled water. We have a water station that we work with in our health region, and one of the challenges that we had was around health policy and how do you manage the removal of solid waste? How do you manage the removal of recycling? How do you navigate those various institutional relationships between cities and service organizations and unions and health organizations? And we had to sort of navigate the District of Mission, who runs the park that we're in, and the District of Abbotsford, who owns the water cart for the health region, and then the health region, who manages how the food vendors are to access the water in order to serve the customers. And all of you mentioned the various organizations that you've worked with, and Spencer, we're going to start with you. We've talked about this a little bit, but how have you engaged with your greater communities in this effort? We've heard about some volunteers, but I'm interested in knowing where you've worked maybe with civic organizations as well, or your presenting partners or sponsors. We haven't talked a lot about that today. So Spencer, this one's for you.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we work with Wellington Water Watchers fairly closely. We also work with Save Our Water. We support both of those organizations as much as possible. We've done things like any tips brought in from the bar, we pool it all, we donate it to those organizations after the event. Usually that brings in between like $3,000 and $7,000 over the weekend, which is it helps them quite a bit. Like I said, we did water stock in 2017, which that brought in about 5,000 people, and it was a great event. We were talking about trying to bring it back. It wasn't in the end. It was a great one-off event. It would have been a hard thing to do every year because we called in a lot of favors for it. A lot of the artists played for free. A lot of the vendors or the suppliers gave us heavy discounts to help us put that on. And it would have been hard to continue to do it at that scale every year. So we have been trying to think of ways to bring that back in a more sustainable way as far as the event goes and the logistics. We've been really lucky. The Township of Center Wellington is very, the actual municipality is very conscious of environmental initiatives. They've been, our community has been in a battle for the last several years with Nestle over a well that was for sale. The township tried to buy it, but Nestle ended up buying it. They haven't been able to pump any water out of it since then. It's kind of gone back and forth. Another company is trying to buy it. I think I heard that fell through recently. It's kind of, but it's our community is very aware. There's initiatives locally where Blue Ribbon Initiative that was started by Save Our Water, where people tie blue ribbons on their trees to show that they support or are against packaged water. That's really been our main focus. And have I answered your question? Am I answering it?
How have you, so you've talked about Water Watchers and you've talked about the civic support. Maybe talk a little bit about some nuts and bolts things. Like how do you work with, say, your local or regional Indigenous communities on these kind of initiatives and efforts? And or how do you work with your business community in terms of, you mentioned not allowing people to do handouts? How do you, like at your festival where it's just going to turn into trash? We do something similar, but we got a lot of pushback from our sponsors. They were like, if we're coming on the grounds, we want to hand out our promo material. So how do you sort of navigate some of those sort of practical working relationships?
As far as sponsors go, it's been, we've had that battle too. We definitely have had to put our foot down a few times. We do make sure if they are giving anything out that they have to, it's in the contract, like we have to clear it first. They're not allowed to just show up and start handing things out. We've actually had, we've had a couple years ago, had to ask a sponsor to shut down because they were in breach of that. And we did. But that's definitely a concern that, sponsors want to, what they say, like one sponsor, we had a beer sponsor want to come in, and when we told them that we use reusable mugs, they said no, and we had to just say okay. They said they wanted cans in hands, and we said sorry, we're doing draft beer, and that's it. So that's definitely an issue. Those are definitely things that have come up. Even as far as plastic straws, I had pushback with that 2 summers ago when we decided we need to say, no, you can't have plastic straws. There's other things you can do. And we had a few of our food vendors that have been with us since the start try and say, well, how am I supposed to serve my my lemonade without a straw? And it's like, really? Just figure it out, or don't come, it's fine. But I think in the end for us, it's just we've had to learn that it's okay to say no, and it's okay if you can't come to an agreement with somebody. It's okay for them to walk away, and it's okay for you to walk away, and you'll figure it out. And as long as everyone's respectful of that decision, then I think that's really the best you can do.
That is sometimes a hard thing to stand by your values on that. Belem, how has that worked for you and your organization?
Well, I think I can highlight two things we're working actually right now on, because so far we have been focused mainly on those actions that we could undertake directly from our own organizations. Those aspects on which we had the final decision. So we realized a few years back that it was the time to start working hand in hand with suppliers. So for one hand, we are working with our mainly suppliers on communication and raising awareness, because I believe it's important, because it was beyond our scope actually. And then the other activity we are conducting since last year, we are the whole business is also funded by our main sponsor on circular economy workshops. So we've been conducting these circular economy workshops, and I think right now we start to running a pilot project, which is actually introduce, let's say, one of the artists, either a musician, a dancer, or any other disciplines within the business community. That was the main activities we're working right now, but especially the communication campaign and the awareness with the suppliers, it must be really relevant. By the other hand, related to other stakeholders, we're really working with universities, civil, society, but since the very beginning. So I think on that side, we're pretty good.
Excellent, thank you. And Marie, how have you approached this at Hillside?
Well, in many ways. So our Indigenous community runs the Indigenous Circle, which is a large space with a TP and workshops. And so they will do their own programming for the entire festival and encourage the kind of understanding of the relationship between humans, animals, and the earth. The sort of spirit that runs through all of them. So there's a cultural ethos there that's expressed in the programming, and it's reflected in the large space and in the staging and showcasing of Indigenous art and workshops. But we, you have to work directly with people, and you have to keep knocking on doors, and you have to keep asking. You know, the history of us bringing the water tanker to Hillside is fascinating, because I guess we were the first to do it, and the city of Guelph wasn't sure what we were talking about, and eventually they came on board and they were a sponsor. But we had to you know, rely on our volunteers to rig up this thing that they welded together, that it would allow them to attach taps to a massive water tanker. And so that had to be sterilized and clean. And so the city would bring in people to test the water all of the time. And at first they thought it was going to be a horrible thing, and it was a big deal. And you know, there were going to be headlines about how they had, you know, poisoned everyone. But you know, eventually they were completely on board, because it became kind of like their project. Also, we worked with a company who actually didn't have a mug that I wanted. So I was ready to sort of say, thank you very much, and you can leave my office now. But the guy said, well, what do you want? So I drew him a picture of a stainless steel mug that I wanted. And he said, well, okay, I'll see what I can do. And he came back with something. I couldn't believe it. Like, how many people who sell mugs are in your office, like throughout the year, you know, at least like 8 to 15. And this guy actually came back. And so he created something that we could sponsor. And so the cost of that mug is, it's a cost recovery program. We don't charge anything extra for it. So that was a really good relationship too. But then we have volunteers who are inventors, and we have facilitators that we use. So if you go into your community, find the people who have really interesting ideas and want to give workshops. You know, we had somebody who gave a workshop on how to organize your own green funeral, or that for your family, how to raise chickens, how to build a solar oven, how to make your own instruments, how to keep bees, things like that. So those are your community people who will come in as facilitators. Go and ask them. There's tons of people out there who have really, and they would love to have a captive audience. But also we have really great volunteers who are, you know, inventors. So the person who did the water tanker, this bang thing, the taps also invented basically a solar water heater for us, using you know, the muscle and ingenuity of other volunteers to create that. So yeah, just keep reaching out. There's tons and tons of people out there with really great ideas, and if you knock on a door and someone says, no way, you're crazy, then just say, okay, thank you very much, but then go back again and see if you can find somebody else to talk to there. Also, bring in businesses that are eco-friendly and have a vision in mind of how they want to transform the planet using their particular product. We had someone sponsor environmentally friendly dishwashing detergent ages ago. So, and they will come on board happily, because festivals like ours, which don't offer opportunities for people to rename our stages and put up great big massive plastic banners and things like that. So sometimes you can feel like you're not offering them very much, but then look at your culture. They want to buy into your culture. And so recognize all of those volunteers and all of those people who are doing that work that makes your place attractive.
You touched on some really good points about connecting within your community, and that I have a final question for this part of the show. And Liv, you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Oh, I was just clapping. I was clapping.
Sorry, friends. It was like hand over. Yeah, no, that is a really good point. So I just want to remind everybody watching that if you have some questions or comments, please feel free to throw those in the chat right now, and we will jump to that in our next session in today. But my last question is, How do you think we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to hear a little bit more about how your particular organizations have supported your efforts. And what I mean by that is, do you have policies and procedures around supporting your sustainability goals? How does your various boards and staff structures support that? I know, Spencer, you mentioned that you're kind of the one full-time staff member. I'm in a very similar situation here at Mission. But I also would like to hear, like, what do you need from your board and staff to be successful in this work? And we will start with Belem, please.
Wow, thinking about it, that's a good question, Michelle, to raise. I think in our case it's more, I would say, like institutionalized in a policy context, you know? Yeah, like we can use a framework to examine together with the whole stakeholders our sustainability principles, I would say, and approach the event and its own evaluation. It might become institutionalized. Yeah, I would say that because I think the conversation stage of our new strategy for the next years. I think we're trying to develop a new paradigm, and we're trying to engage as much as we can, like public and private stakeholders. Yeah.
Perfect. And a practical question: do you have a sustainability budget line?
Yeah, we do have. Since, as I mentioned before, since we raised and we hired this person who is actually mainly focused on this particular area, yeah, we do have. Yeah, and we are trying to fundraise with other European calls, like for example the new Green Deal. We are trying to actually get these consortiums, and we're trying to build up other networks with other European festivals to just not sharing the successful stories or to share capacity buildings, but also, just to come up with more specific activities and let's say pilot project we can all share.
And Spencer, how has that worked for Riverfest? Oh, you're muted.
Can you just repeat the question one more time for me?
Yeah. How sort of what organizational, structural, budget resources do you need to do this work, and how has that required buy-in from your board and staff?
So for us, it's a little different. We, sorry, one sec. We, so Riverfest is actually structured as a for-profit business. It's not a not-for-profit festival, which is a bit unusual for a festival of our type. That being said, it was started by a group of local people who put all their own money in to start something in their community, and it's been supported by those people ever since. I can say no one's making any money off the festival. Everything gets put back in. So it's interesting in that way. So in that regard, like, we don't have a board of directors. We have we have an advisory board, and members of the advisory board are also the partners who were the people that originally put in their own money to make it happen. With that in mind, generally it's been pretty, for me as a staff and for our volunteers who come to us with ideas, it's been pretty easy from the idea to the actual work being done or the actual change being made, because I'm not saying because I like boards. Boards are great, but sometimes they can get bogged down. With us, it's mostly myself and 2 or 3 other people to tell our advisory board, this is what we want to do. They actually very rarely have ever come to us and said had issues with it. It's more like they all get together and try to help us figure out how we can do it. So I guess I'm saying, like, we haven't had a lot of hurdles to go through as far as decisions we've made, but sometimes it does feel like sometimes it feels like we have a lot of support, and then sometimes it feels like I'm talking and nobody's hearing what I'm saying. So I don't know if that is. You have to excuse me. I said at the beginning too, like, I got my vaccine a couple of days ago. I'm a little bit like wonky still from it, so Hope I'm making sense.
You are doing fine. Thank you. And Marie, how has that worked at Hillside? Do you have policies and procedures in place when you're developing your budgets? You know, where does sustainability factor into that?
We do have a reserve fund for environmental initiatives. And so if we ever have a surplus at all, money goes into that fund. But every single year we have a green team that fundraises at the festival. And so they've been very successful. And every year we have a new green initiative of some sort. So the green team has raised money for everything from solar lights and blazing hiking trails to the solar water heater. But we also, for instance, contributed to the Guelph Lake Conservation Area's washrooms. So they wanted to put in, I don't know if you've been to provincial parks in Ontario, but they all have these like standard washrooms that are usually heated by either electricity or some kind of gas. And so we said, well, why don't we do solar showers, a solar shower building? So we raised money for that so that at Guelph Lake we can have that. So partnerships are important. But I think you'd have to imagine, like, that's the financial piece, is that we do have money there. And sometimes it's not enough money for a project, so we have to delay the project, but sometimes it's just enough. So for instance, for us to buy stainless steel cutlery, we had enough money one year, so we bought it all. But guess what? It disappears. So you've got to keep money in your budget to keep buying that stuff. Same with some of our plates and mugs and so on. But if you imagine sort of like a circle of influence, or it's more like a whirlpool, you know, so somebody from the community comes to you and says, you know, I think I have a solution for your audiovisual needs or whatever. That's an alternative source of power. We're going to use pedal power. What do you think of that? And so that goes to one of our 21 committees, so the sustainability committee, and we talk that through. And then it comes to the finance committee and risk management and the board, and we all look at it from different angles. You know, as a not-for-profit charity, we're pretty slow moving in that it's so many stakeholders have to hire. Finally, when it comes out the other end, you've got a lot of people who participated in that process. And so they feel really good about it. We're not a big policy making organism. We like guidelines. We like self-reliance. We like to be able to come up with our own ideas and not to feel like we're pinned down, but we do have goals, and every committee has a goal that operates from the strategic plan. So if you have sustainability goals every year or every 3 years or whatever, then the whole organization gets behind that, trying to achieve that.
Oh, thank you for that. You've really driven that point home, that we can all be together in service to something larger than what our individual events and audiences are gathering for. I'm going to thank the three of you for participating with us today, and I'm going to hand the conversation back to Liv in our presentation today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Great. I don't know if anybody here wanted to touch a little bit further on the financial end of things. I'd written a little comment in the chat just before about whether any of these choices have really impacted your financial position, if any of your green initiatives have ended up helping your position at all, or if it's always been a higher cost thing that you consider and you know that you want to take on. So if anyone wants to jump in, I'm curious if any of you have insight on that for everybody, all the other festivals here.
Liz, I'll quickly answer that just to say on behalf of Mission, most of our environmental costs were built into with the cost of garbage removal, or, you know, in recycling and that sort of thing. One thing that we haven't been able to act on that we've wanted to was carbon offsets, and that our budget is set, and to participate in an offset program. We haven't financially been able to do it yet, but that is something that we we are working towards.
I'm not sure if Marie's able to touch on that. I know was it just this last year that you started doing carbon offsets?
2019.
Okay.
Yeah. And so our big thing was to measure absolutely everything, because as most of you understand, like we're basically a volunteer-run organization, and you know, everybody's inventive, but they're sort of boots on the ground, and they want to shape things and make things, and so they don't want to measure it. So for the longest time, we had no idea how much we were saving in terms of CO2. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, we decided, you know what, we're going to do an audit of the festival. And so once we did the audit, it was so much easier from there to say, okay, we used that much. How can we reduce that now? Because you have something, you know, you standard or a baseline rather that you can measure against. So, so that was very helpful. But in terms of the finances, I mean, we're always looking for cost recovery ways and sponsorship for things. So for instance, the mugs, I told you, they're partly sponsored so that we can keep the price down, so that, you know, that the people at our festival don't have to put down 10 or 12 bucks for a mug and then purchase a beer to put in that, because that first hit is really hard. So we have sponsorship there, but we also, like, we ask people, you know, we were looking for a solar sponsor. We couldn't find one at the end of the day, but we did find somebody who would contribute some money toward our purchase of the solar tiles for the solar water heater, and somebody else who would contribute money so that we could buy these pedal machines so we could generate pedal power. And then we asked volunteers that, look, if we buy the solar infrastructure for these cell charging stations, would you build them? And could that be part of your sponsorship? So that's generally how we've been working things. It's not perfect because we can't always, you know, buy exactly what we want to buy or make exactly what we want to make. But I think it's pretty good. Like, we've been really lucky finding those really good people who want to give money toward these initiatives.
Thanks for that,
Yeah,
Marie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Belem.
No, if I jump in, I mean, I can see a difference, at least for us, in the last years, because we are mainly funded by public. So the process and arrangement for allocating public funds, I think for us, are the key levers for achieving, you know, sustainability. So I think right now it's pretty much easier for us to not struggle with the budget in terms of sustainability, because even the sponsor, the private ones, the publics are more aware, more conscious about it. So I can see like a, you know, like a difference in the last, let's say 10 years.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I would like to give the participants, everybody here, a chance. If you have a question, if you have a thought that you want to share, this is a great time to do it before we wrap up. So if you want to put your hand towards your camera or use one of those cute little reaction buttons, I'll just kind of keep a lookout here to see if anyone would like to share or ask. Just flipping between the two screens for a moment. There is a question that Christoph has for Marie. You referred to a trash turnaround area at the festival. Could you elaborate on that, as well as managing the dishwashing at that scale? That's a great question.
Yeah. We called it that because we wanted people to understand that there are 3 streams in the trash turnaround where you can kind of give back to the earth. So we have a dishwashing stream, a recycling stream, and a compost stream. And we dig compost pits on the site itself. But then we have a landfill. And so the trash turnarounds are color coded and the landfill is black because that's the dark stuff that we yeah, we just didn't really want to have to deal with. But so much of the stuff that's in the trash turnaround is what people actually bring to your festival. It's the wrappings from their gum and the packaging around just their crap that they bring. And that's what's in the landfill piece. So we had to go through all kinds of things in order to measure what comes out of the trash turnaround, that is weighing. We spent a year weighing every single bucket of compost that was created at the site and so on. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about that.
Okay.
There's a really interesting festival in just outside of Portland called Pickathon, and it's on a private farm. And they have sort of at the center of everything they do is sustainability. And they do a very similar thing where every year they provide for their food vendors and for campers, anyone who is eating on site, they provide branded bowls, plates, and sporks, bamboo sporks. And every year it's branded with whatever their animal is. They always have an animal feature. And you pay a $10 deposit and you get a little like gambling chip kind of thing. And anytime you go to a food vendor, you hand in your chip and you get your food on one of their branded plates. And you mentioned that hit, right? Like that first time, I was at this festival, I was like, oh, I'm paying $10 for this privilege of using it all weekend. That said, you can also go to the food vendors with your own plates and your own cutlery and that sort of thing. But what was an unintended consequence that they found with this is that was one of the largest sources of merch sales. And that people weren't handing in their plates and cutlery at the end. They were taking it home with them, in addition to, the clean canteen, stainless steel beer mug kind of thing. And so that was sort of an excellent unintended consequence. I know we did. We were like, well, we've been, like on Sunday night, everyone's kind of like licking their plate clean so they can shove it in their bag to take home. So it was a neat, and because it's a camping festival, that was kind of a neat option.
Yeah.
I see another question that's come through. What do you do to encourage festival goers to keep being environmentally conscious throughout the year? That is a great question as well. I'm not sure if Belem, you want to touch on that first, or anybody.
Well, I think in Sinsal we have positioned themselves like more on the sustainable side. So I think we've been working, in the last 20 years on a big campaign on sustainability. So I think like pretty much the target we have on the festival, there are people that are really conscious about it. Yeah, I don't know if that's answered the questions, but I think we have made a lot of progress in the last, let's say, 5-6 years in terms of, making the sustainability is a core. It's a core and in the planning of our events,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that question. That was my question. I was just asking because to me, festivals are somewhat like little towns or setups. And I just got this idea that, well, what if the festival ran all year? Maybe that's not sustainable, but what if there are other ways to contribute to the city and the region where the festival is? So I don't know if that adds more clarity to the question, because of course we're all part of an ecosystem and the cities that, regions, towns that we operate in.
I can partly answer that question, and that is that there's lots of opportunities at our festival to participate, not just to be a spectator, but to participate in workshops, and they can be anything from how to play a ukulele to, as I said, how to keep bees or ring funeral. So that's a form of education, but we also have this thing called neighborhood tent, where other environmental or socially conscious organizations in the community have their tables and they put out their wares, and they spend time all weekend educating people about their concerns. But they sign them up as volunteers for their gigs, whether or not it's like, I don't know, a cycling initiative in the city, for instance, encouraging bike lanes, there's petitions to sign and so on. We also find ways of giving information to our MCs so that the MCs can describe to people what effect their particular action is having on the world. Or we put them in the program, we put little blips about, did you know that da 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 have saved 300,000 bottles from landfill, and or did you know that? You know, so these are, you have to be really careful with green initiatives, because if people feel like you're trying to push them down their throat, they'll accuse you of being uppity or tedious. So you always want to kind of manage a good relationship with people first, and make them feel like they're glad to be alive at your festival, not ashamed of it. You know, so it's a hard deal.
I would love to touch, as a community member in Guelph, something that I see making a difference throughout the year is your presence at other events. If you're co-presenting another artist at another concert, or like my band, The Lifers, asked Hillside one time, could we please borrow your reusable cups for our album release concert, and we'll promote you at that concert. And that was a really neat way to be able to increase that visibility and keep it at the front of people's minds that, you know, we care about sustainability, and Hillside is one great organization in Guelph that really vouches for it.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for that.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this has been really lovely, and a really amazing way to start this conversation with festivals for today's workshop. And I just want to remind everybody that this is the first of 4. And so next Tuesday at 2, we have a gathering that is specifically for performers or artists who are hoping to start to think about sustainability in different ways. So if you have any folks in mind that you feel like would appreciate this kind of conversation on that end, please pass the word along. The week after that is all about sustainable places. Includes anywhere from offices to venues to studios. So think of those people as well. And then finally, we've got partners. So that is a little more broad, but between agents and managers and labels, your whole team really that can come together and do a part of the work, so that we as a whole, as a music community, can start to see some major change. And I don't want to say most importantly, but I'm really excited that Global Toronto is going to be hosting a roundtable discussion at their conference in June. So all 4 of these workshops are going to be available for people to view and then come together and talk about it at that roundtable. So anybody here who's interested in being a part of that can head to globaltoronto.org to check out if you want to be involved in that conversation. Music Declares Emergency Canada is also hosting a bunch of events coming up, including a conversation with Seth Klein on May 27th, a panel on sustainable fashion and merch on June 1st, a conversation about Record Store Day and the implications of vinyl on June 8th. And we're also running a sustainable t-shirt campaign from now until the end of May. So please check out the musicdeclares.ca website. our Facebook page, Instagram, and same with our amazing partners, FMO and Global Toronto. Thank you so much for putting this on. We would love to have you volunteer with Music Declares if you have a couple hours in your week or your month. We're looking for some more people to get on board, and most importantly, signing that declaration so that we can all really put our names on one place to say we believe there needs to be some really important changes made in this industry and beyond. So it'd be really great if all of you could consider signing that.